to Watch is an intimate look into the lives of prominent and influential women leaders from around the world and the challenges they faced on their journey. It's the real story behind her title. Join us every week to hear more stories about women from around the world and in your own communities at womentowatch.net. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another week of Women to Watch. I'm Sue Rocco. Thanks so much for being with me. Joining me in just a moment will be Kavita Sahai. And Kavita is the founder of K Sahai Beauty and Wellness. I'm excited to jump into a conversation with Kavita about human design, which she did research on for her own company. Don't forget to stay with us during the breaks, where you'll hear from our exclusive watch team of corporate partners. So now I'm very honored to welcome to the show, Kavita Sahai. Kavita, hi, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm very excited to have you. And I wanted to start off and have you talk a little bit about what I would say is somewhat of an unusual upbringing, in that you did quite a bit of traveling as a young girl, living in what I would say are three completely different places: Saudi Arabia, LA, and Southern Florida. So perhaps you can just tell our viewers and listeners a little bit about why so much travel.
Yeah, absolutely. So my father worked for an oil company at the time. It was called Aramco. And so as an engineer, he then was posted in the Middle East, which was pretty popular. And so we lived in an American compound. So although we were in Saudi Arabia and had to abide by a lot of those laws, so my mom wore, the hijab, and she wasn't allowed to drive within the compound. And in the international school that I went to, it felt very much like I was in America, or at least all that I knew at that point.
At that age, right?
Right. At that age, exactly. At that age, I was like, oh, it's normal for your mom to put you on a bicycle and bike you everywhere. Right.
Yeah.
It seemed nice, but it was actually pretty sweet because you have such a strong sense of community because you know everybody in the community. And so every Friday, I can remember we'd all go to the pool and swim, or there was always some kind of a party or activity or something going on. And
did your mom, was she working at the time?
No, she was not working. And actually working was not allowed for women in the Middle East. So
wow.
She wasn't able to drive, and she wouldn't have been able to work. But I always call my mom the international socialite, because since then she's lived in many other countries, and she's just one of those people who can procure a great group of friends immediately and will, put on different fashion shows to raise money for charity, or, so she was always busy.
And then what brought you to the United States? And how old were you when you came?
Yeah. So again, it was my father's job. They just moved back to the headquarters in Pasadena near Los Angeles. And I was in probably, I think, fourth grade when we made that move.
Okay. That's a pivotal age, I would say, for girls.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to go back to fourth grade.
Yeah, exactly. No, me neither, actually, or middle school or any of that.
Right.
But, yeah, it was interesting. I, because I lived in this American compound, America itself had been completely, I would say, I don't want to say advertised, but made to be this amazing place with, streets paved of gold and all the amazingness in California in particular. So I was actually really, really excited. And also, I think by that age, I was starting to become very aware of the restrictions, because also as a part of living in the Middle East at that time, you had to leave the country every so often. Like, you couldn't be there for an extended time. So we traveled a lot. So every 6 months the company would pay for us to go on a vacation. So a lot of times we'd go to Europe or, somewhere in the US, but I came to become very aware that there's this other big world outside of this compound in which I lived. And I was excited to explore it. So it was exciting. I enrolled in a public school, and it was sort of my intro into American culture, if you will, true American culture.
Yeah. You described to me your family as a large conservative Indian family. And I wondered if you could describe a little bit about just the values and the traditions. What does that mean?
Yeah. So I would say my parents within our family was probably more on the liberal side. But when I moved from Southern California to Southern Florida, which is where most of my family lived, it was sort of this integration of real traditional Indian values. So, for example, the men would eat first. And then once they were done, the women would clear their plates and then they would eat. And sometimes they would eat all the food and then they would have to recook at like 10 o'clock at night to then have food for them to eat.
Well, that's not fair.
No, it didn't seem very fair to me either. It's like, what's going on? And by the way, all the men and women in my family here are doctors. So it wasn't even like there was any, oh, well, they were resting at home or, anything like that. No, both physicians. And so there was some of that element. And then, some of it was really sweet. It was just the way that you address each other. It was in a very traditional way. And I found there's like all things, there was a good and the bad.
Right. Yes. And we would describe that here, I would say, as old school, and depending
Right.
on the culture, different cultures, kind of fell into those traditional values. But, you were somewhat of a rebel and, wanted to challenge things. And were you able to do that? Was that, I don't want to say fight, but, that drive in you, how was it received from your parents when you were growing up?
Yeah, so I would say my parents and my aunts and uncles, obviously they didn't love it. Nobody wants somebody who's always challenging authority or always asking why do we do it this way? Why can't I? There was also the gender roles within the house of the girls would then help with the dishes and the cooking. And the guys were sort of treated like little princes. And so all of that sort of, I would try to challenge a lot. And I would say that now it has changed also. So I'd say, fast forward 25 some years and our family has completely evolved as well. But in that time, they didn't love it, right? So it just became the black sheep of the family, right? Like she doesn't want to do medicine and she doesn't want to do all the things we're telling her that have been culturally prescribed for years and years, the tradition of it all. But I think a lot of that was just speaks to who I am. I was very curious and I asked a lot of questions. And it was just a part of my nature to be that way.
Yeah, which is really, that is a good thing, right? That's the way we should all be, wanting to explore and question things. We should not ever be just kind of complicit followers.
That's right.
Yeah. So tell me, when did you make the decision? I know, not going to med school may have been a disappointment for the family, but how did you settle on finance?
Yeah, so it was funny. My entire network of people were essentially either you were an engineer or you were a doctor, right? Because I was Indian and those were sort of like the two paths that people took. And because those were the two paths, we had to do a lot of community service at the hospital and carrying around specimens and being in the hospital. I was like, wow, this is really just not what I want to do at all. But I didn't really have any scope or form of reference of what I might want to do. I didn't even know what was possible to do. And so I can just remember I was watching Pretty Woman and I thought, gosh, I think that's what I want to do, not Julia Roberts, but I was like, I want to be what Richard Gere is. Like he's wearing these fancy suits and he's putting businesses together and he's helping the old guy out. And this seems interesting. And so I started to go on this like journey of exploration to say like, what is it that he does? Right. Because nobody in my family had any idea. And through a lot of just different conversations, which I think because of moving around a lot, I was never scared to ask people things. So I would always strike up conversations with people. And I think random conversations have truly shaped my entire life. And so one of these conversations was with a kid at a debate tournament. And he was like, oh, that guy does private equity. And I want to do that. And this is the whole path to get there. And he was like, you have to do investment banking and then, get in. And then after that, you can get in and then you get your master's and so forth. And so I just decided to follow that path. And I can remember my aunt saying, why don't you become a doctor first and then go there?
Because that's a lot of schooling.
That's a lot of work.
That's a lot of work. Can I ask you, was some of it, I want to do what the boys are doing? Or was it just more kind of bucking the tradition of the family and the way that you were raised?
I think that particular decision was more just, I know I'm not interested in the sciences. It wasn't really meant to be a sense of rebellion. And I really, again, my exposure was so limited, right? So it was really like whatever professions I might see on TV. We didn't have guidance counselors. There was no personality tests at that time to tell you what you would be most likely to do. But then when I started to find out that that particular path was very challenging, especially for women, and especially for women who didn't come from particular schools, I would say yes. Then I was like, okay, I'm going to go get this. This is going to happen for me.
Yeah. Tell me what was hard for you when you were younger. What gave you any kind of anxiety or worry? What was a challenge?
Um, I was a pretty fearless child, I have to say. I think what was challenging is, so the reason I ended up in South Florida was because my father got posted back to the Middle East. And at that time, they didn't allow for international schools, even for international schools to educate girls past middle school. So when he went back, I wouldn't have been able to go to school, obviously. So that was not going to happen. And my mom decided, rather than sending me to a boarding school, that these would be the last 4 years she would ever live with me. And so we just decided to move to South Florida, where we had a lot of family to do education. But that was really hard because, again, communication isn't what it is today. So it would be like the one phone call from my dad a week, and then I wouldn't see him for many, many months. And then he would come and it would be like, spend time with your dad. And I'm like, I don't feel like we know each other. And so that was really, it was challenging to kind of like cram bond.
Yeah, that's hard.
Especially in those years where I think as a teenager, you're going through so many different changes. I actually have teenagers now, so I really have a front seat to it again.
Yeah.
But you're really not sure of who you are and how you fit in and how much you want to be with your parents or not with your parents.
Yeah. Plus,
So I would say that was really challenging.
yeah, and he was missing that evolution. He was missing your evolution. Yeah.
Exactly. And then him, he had grown up in India. And so seeing an American teenage daughter, I think there was a lot of disappointment initially in, maybe how I was dressing or the choices I was making. And so it all felt really hard. Like I felt very misunderstood, and I was very close to my dad because I think I was more like him than my mom. And so I think that period was really difficult.
Did you have a nice core group of friends that, you could lean on? Yeah, I think that makes a big
Actually,
difference.
my best friend from that time is my best friend till today.
Oh, that's so nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's so nice. So tell me, what was your first job out of college?
So out of college, I did mergers and acquisitions in defense and aerospace. It was right post 9/11. So it was a really hot sector. And it was kind of interesting how I even gotten placed in there because I had gotten the job in the investment bank, and you go through this like training and then you decide what groups you want. And I had actually, for industry groups, I had put consumer products first. And, I was one of maybe 4 girls in the whole class of like 50 analysts. And of course, all the guys put defense and aerospace as their first choice because, the war was happening and there was so much activity. And the group is run by a lot of ex-Navy SEALs. So it was just, I think the cool factor. But they picked me and they only picked 3. And I was like, wow, I'm so flattered. Like, how did you even think of selecting me? Because they don't even recruit from my school. So it was mostly these like Ivy League schools. And they were like, oh, because of your engineering background. And I was like, I'm not an engineer, but that's funny because I'm Indian. You thought so.
Oh my gosh. Is that what happened?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
So it was one of those times when stereotyping really worked in my favor.
Right, exactly. And it showed itself. So let's talk about, I want to jump ahead a little bit. I'm sure there was an aha moment for you where you made a conscious decision that you were going to leave the field because it was not, it just wasn't serving you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Talk about that. Was there an exact do you remember a day and a moment where you just felt like it's time?
It was one of those things where when you arrive, you realize it was never actually the true goal, right? So when I finally got exactly what I wanted and there was no more mountains to climb, so to speak, right? There wasn't that next challenge because, it was like get into banking, then get into your master's program, and then get the private equity job. And then once I was there, I was like, wow, this can't possibly be the life that I fought so hard to get, right? Mm-hmm. This constant workaholic who never sees her family and, who looks and feels terrible all the time. Like this couldn't possibly be it. And I think that with a combination of the firm I ended up in did a series of layoffs of people that had been with the firm since the day they opened the doors. And they did it in such a terrible way. They sent an email. They didn't even meet them in person. And you have to remember, these firms are small. It's not like a big corporation, right? I think I just felt like, wow, where's the sense of loyalty or ethics? Like this just didn't sit well. And I think in that moment, I was like, I'm done. And once I was done, I was done. It was, again, call me a movie person. It was Jerry Maguire style. I sent a memo. I was like, this is wrong on so many levels. I'm out, and who's coming with me?
Wow.
Nobody went with me, but
nobody did. Is that what you Well,
but I was also, to be fair, I was married. My husband had a income. Everyone else there was a guy who was the primary earner of their family.
Well, that's a big difference. So there's that, it's such an interesting topic. I was talking about this afternoon with several other women, the decision to leave corporate or finance or law, comes with that decision that you're leaving security, financial security. And so you had a husband that, there was a safety net there, but was there a fear as well? Because, having a family and children in today's world, there's often a need for two incomes, two careers.
Yeah. Well, we were in the middle of buying a house, so that definitely put that on shaky ground for sure. I was sort of a jump first, think later person, unfortunately or fortunately. So I wasn't in that moment scared. I think after it all happened, I was like, oh shit, I needed health insurance. And now, at that time, I was actually pregnant. So that became a pre-existing condition. So I wasn't able to get insurance. And so there were some things I wish I would have maybe thought through a little bit more in hindsight, but I kind of just had this faith that it was going to work out. And I would say, the corporate journey is kind of like that for me. And the entrepreneurial journey was like more like that. But I had so much more fun.
Yeah. I want to ask you, Kavita, what do you think? We're seeing a lot of women leaving corporate and starting new endeavors. What is going on, would you say? What do you think the main reason is that women become unhappy with that type of work?
Oh my gosh. Well, I could probably talk on this topic for an hour because I feel that there are so many things, and I have so many friends that are, I almost want to call it corporate trauma because of the mistreatment, the just real lack of recognition of what women are bringing to the workforce and to certain places. And so I think that's really what it is. I think we do all the right things, we make the right moves, and then somehow there's still not that equal treatment. Like that glass ceiling is still really there. And, to a point where it's just too frustrating and you think, well, gosh, I'm so smart. Why don't I just go do it for myself?
Would you also say there's an element of personally something feels like it's missing?
Well, I think there's a misalignment, right? So at some point you're like, well, this doesn't feel right? I'm working too hard for what it is, or, there's not an alignment of leadership to, the role. I think there's a lot of this sort of thing. And I think there's really blatant mistreatment, like blatant discrimination, blatant mistreatment, where women are like, well, this wasn't it. And they've amassed enough money to be able to have the security blanket to go try.
Yeah. We're seeing a lot of it. It's exciting, actually, I would say, an exciting time. Listen, we're going to go into our first break. And when we come back, I want to talk about the aha moment for Sahai Beauty and Wellness. We'll be back with Kavita Sahai. Stay tuned for our watch team of corporate partners who are going to bring you segments of their own news and education and information from their industries. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Christy McCaffrey, founder and owner of Be the Good Media, and I'm here to share some good news with you. I wanted to share with you about a recent guest I had on my podcast named Jessie Sheridan. Jessie is the founder of a community called Habitual, and her mission really is to help other women rise to their fullest potential. When she was a guest on the show, she said something that really struck me. She said that in a world where we can be anything, she chooses to be a megaphone for other women who are working hard, who are leaders in their community, and who are intentionally choosing to lift others as they climb. And I just love that because I think that we're at a moment right now where women are really eager to support other women. Women want to see other women thrive. And that's really what her community is all about. And it's what our conversation was all about when I had her as a guest on the show. To hear more of my conversation with Jessie, you can visit bethegoodmedia.com. And there you'll also learn more about how Be the Good Media works to amplify impact-driven missions and causes. I'm Christy McCaffrey. Be sure to listen here for more good news on Women to Watch.
We are CHOP, and we can't wait to show you around. We're the nation's first children's hospital. Now, a care network with more than 50 locations that continues to expand. 3 state-of-the-art research buildings with 1.5 million square feet of space. We have grown from 12 beds 165 years ago to nearly 600 beds and one of the best children's hospitals in the world. We have a level 1 trauma center, 11 floors of patient units, more than 20 operating rooms, first of its kind delivery unit for babies with birth defects, a separate cardiac operative and catheterization suite, and places to learn, like our internationally recognized simulation center. We have trained generations of leaders in the field of pediatrics. We are world leaders in medicine, surgery, and science. One of the top recipients in NIH funding for pediatric research. In this building, pioneers in CAR T therapy, mitochondrial disease, brain tumors, hyperinsulinism, and other rare diseases. Here, groundbreaking work in fetal surgery, genetics and genomics, and neurology. In our newest building, leaders in social determinants of health, clinical informatics and epidemiology, autism, trauma and injury prevention. Our patients come from every state and 115 countries. Meeting these challenges requires the best and the brightest. We are passionate about pediatrics. We are motivated to make a difference in the world and in our community. We are a team. We are CHOP.
Welcome back to the show. I'm speaking this week with Kavita Sahai, and Kavita is the founder of Sahai Beauty and Wellness. And we will talk about the company, but I had a quick question pertaining to, the beginning of our conversation. And I wondered if the fact that your mom did not work, I'll say, outside the home, did that have any impact on your desire to move forward with a career?
So my mom didn't work outside of the home when we were in the Middle East. When we came back to the US, she did do a couple different roles. And I will admit at times I always wondered why she didn't work. And I didn't really appreciate what raising children, especially at that time, because it was me, my sister, and my dad was still in the Middle East, how much it took to be sort of a single mom, which I now as a mother, I really can appreciate. But I think growing up, I always thought I was going to be financially independent. I don't know if it was necessarily seeing that she wasn't or not, because she was always such a happy person. So I never felt like she was unhappy in the role in which she played. She loved being a mother. And I will say now she loves being a grandmother. But I always felt for myself that I really wanted to have financial independence.
Yeah. Well, that's a good goal. That's a good goal for any woman. I wanted to ask you about the phrase human design, because I know it was something that you kind of dove into once you made the decision to leave investment banking and you started to explore the wellness industry. You dove into human design. Tell our listeners what that is.
Yeah, so human design is this system that really combines astrology, the chakra system, I Ching, Kabbalah, and through all of that, it gives you your energy blueprint. And so what was interesting is when I went on the wellness journey, I kind of threw myself into it the way I did when I was going into finance, just completely all in. And so, of course, there's the mind part, which is the meditation, and there's the body's part, it's the wellness. And then from a spirituality standpoint, the human design, it really resonated with me because it helped to explain how we're all different energy bodies, which I always believed. And it groups you by these different types of energy. And based on your type of energy, you're more likely to respond or express frustrations in certain ways and take care of yourself in certain ways. And I felt like that really made sense because some people can really find amazing peace sitting still and meditating, and some people find amazing peace running. And how do you reconcile some of these things? And especially in a day and age where we're always looking online for inspiration for how to do fill in the blank, whatever it is. And so I felt like if there could be this alignment of like, well, if you follow people with your same energy type, you're much more likely to have greater success because they're going to be able to react in the world with the different energies in the same way.
That's a great analogy. Just when you mentioned people needing stillness and quiet and other people need to run. Right. Yeah.
And some people, they always need people with them, and some people need some alone time to discharge. And some people can be workaholics happily, and some people can't. And so all of that is sort of revealed in your design. And I think what's amazing, like I've had people when they get their report, which we offer for free on the website, just cry when they started to learn, like, oh my God, this makes so much more sense. Like, this is why I feel this way. Because there is a type called projectors, and they're known to sort of be ahead of the trend, if you will. And sometimes because of that, misunderstood.
It's really interesting. I'd love to do it. I'm going to have to jump on.
Let me know your type. And so I think that it really helps, like within my house, knowing what my kids are. I'm like, okay, you need space alone. You need to go outside and run, right? You need to sleep alone, all of these kinds of things. These small little adjustments, I find these tiny micro adjustments is actually what makes the biggest difference.
I would even say that one of the keys to happiness is knowing who you are. So that, 100%. Right, that deep dive into self-exploration leads to happiness because the understanding.
And then through that is self-love, right? So because we understand ourselves, we can really love ourselves for who we are and our unique composition of both strengths and weaknesses, and really understand where we thrive. There's even a part which tells you like which centers are open and which are closed. And so, for example, if your throat chakra is open, it might be that you have a harder time expressing and you're taking in a lot from the outside, right? And so if you know that about yourself, you can kind of just take note and see how you support it. So I just find that all this information is just this amazing journey of self-discovery. And it's really, there's so many layers. And so you could just really slowly start to understand, over, years, a little bit more about yourself. And again, make micro adjustments that I think really make a huge difference to your energy level. So a lot of this all started because I always felt tired. I felt like I got to a point where I'd say something to my kids and be like, let us guess, you're tired. I was like, that's not a good way to do it.
Yeah, right.
I don't want to be known as tired. Like, how was your mom? Tired.
She can't play with us. She's tired.
She's tired. Exactly. And so, and my mother, conversely, was, obviously much older than I am, and like the Energizer Bunny. And so I was like, what is that? Like, how is it that some people can have all this vibrancy and energy and some don't? And I really felt that this method of study and making micro adjustments to your human design type really helped me build up that energy to where I do feel vibrant and energetic and I'm not tired because I've understood what drains and what adds to my energy and how to control that throughout a day.
So just the knowledge of it changed things for you. And as you said, it's years of understanding and learning, but the awareness is what kind of alleviates the anxiety of why am I like this?
Exactly. I'll give you another example. There's a channel. It's Voice for the Voiceless. So it's one of these things that tells you who you are. And so when I started to understand what that meant, I realized that one of the reasons I couldn't feel fulfilled is because I didn't have impact tied into my business. And it really was my path, and my energy body is only going to be fueled if I'm helping. And I think that's true for all of us in some way. But it seemed to come up really strong in my chart. And so when I embedded this piece so that every time we sell something, we're also doing something amazing abroad or even within the country in give back, is when I started to feel more energized about it. It just, again, it was that little tweak. And I was like, wow, this makes such a big difference.
So tell me, when you decided that what you were going to focus on in this kind of wellness arena were these oils that I believe are highly used in India. And obviously they're, organic and botanical. And also, why do you think India is ahead of the times in having seen the benefits, the efficacy of it for so many years?
I mean, I don't know why it's behind the times, but I think what's exciting is everyone's getting behind these trends. So for example, yoga, as you know, comes from India. It comes from the Vedic text, which is the same text that Ayurveda comes from, which has a lot of study around oil massage and things like that. And so there are sort of these sister sciences that are now becoming very popular because they've worked for, hundreds and hundreds of years.
Right.
And they're natural. And so I think as the growing awareness, people are, again, getting a little bit curious, like, oh, yoga makes me feel really good. I don't know why, but it does. Right. So can I trust that? And so I think that this whole journey was this series of experiments. Can you try this oil? Instead of using the 12-step process on your skin, can you just have one oil that just works for you? Right. And can you use that oil to wash, moisturize, and take off your makeup? That's what
it sounds like heaven.
That's what it is. And so that's where I started to get to, we don't need all of this excess, right? Let's go back to basics. And with wellness, I mean, I would say aromatherapy has been so overused in the US in a bad way, in the sense that everybody's like, oh, I made these oils, they smell good, it's good for you. And I always compare it to, I can give music notes to me and I can give it to, a very seasoned pianist, and they're going to come up with a very different song than I am. Right. And that's how it is with formulas. And so I really feel like it's that distinction. And I'm not even the main formulator. I partnered with a woman who's gotten her master's in this. She's written books. She is the expert on formulation, because it really is the formula that matters and that differentiates. And so by using natural botanicals, you can create natural healing, which I think is so important, because we live in a society where we just need this quick hit fix, but then don't think about all the different side effects that are going to happen.
You know what I find so interesting? You use the word trust. And I think years ago, I know when we were growing up, we were distrusting all the yogis and aromatherapists. Right. They were considered, woo-woo was the word. Right.
Yeah.
And now there's been a complete 360, and we're embracing it and not trusting all of the chemical-based products that have been.
Because I think we're seeing the effects of it. We've never had higher rates of cancer. We've never had higher rates of, anything, allergies, within kids, all the ADHD. I think we're now seeing the effects of the quick microwavable meals, the quick, grow vegetables that all look the same in the same size. I think all of this is coming to play, and people are really starting to pay more attention to their food. And I think the next step is the skin, which is the largest organ. So what are we putting on our skin? In the same way that you can read a food label and know what's in it, why shouldn't we be able to read our cosmetic labels or our lotions and, all of that and understand what's inside?
Yeah. You had to do a significant amount of research, and what was that like? What did you discover perhaps that was eye-opening for you?
So I love research. I could have been in school forever, honestly. But so I loved the whole process because I was like, oh my God, like I remember when I was reading about different rituals and the scientific proof behind it. So most cultures pray before they eat. And the reason they do that is it sort of lowers your fight or flight so that you can digest better. So it's like, oh, wow, there's like a reason that these traditions and rituals were in place. And I think that was some of the coolest things to really learn. And then really unlearn, right? Unlearn about all the things we think we have to do. And I find myself having to do it constantly because you're always bombarded like, you should do Botox. It prevents wrinkles. And I'm like, okay, but I believe face yoga does that and it's natural. I don't know. But you have to keep, right? You have to keep
being like, does that and it's natural?
Face yoga.
Oh, I thought
face yoga and face oil massage.
Oh my gosh. I thought you said face yogurt. And I thought,
no,
heard of that trend.
Actually, yogurt is good for your skin too. But no, but I think in a world where we're constantly like, hey, you have to do this, or you're gonna not be skinny or not be beautiful, or you have to kind of come back to, no, we just need to really work on what has worked for centuries and centuries, which is really just plants, right? Plant oils, plants, and then some form of exercise or movement.
Yeah. Okay. So talk about the company and what are the products and we'll share where people can find them, but
sure.
About the company.
So it's K Sahai, it's ksahai.com. And we have 3 quizzes that kind of help. And one is wellness, which will help you with, is there, whether it's allergies or you can't sleep. I'd say sleep is our first seller, but these are just natural oils that you can use for the 7 most common ailments. And they also coordinate with the chakra that they best balance. So a lot of times if you find that you're drawn to a specific color, it could mean that chakra needs support. And so there's kind of 2 forms that are, 2 reasons you could potentially purchase from the wellness products. And then on the skin, it's a custom skin oil. So based on your ethnicity, because Mother Nature is amazing, and the botanicals that are from where your ancestors are from are most likely to be best for you. And so we take that along with your skin conditions, to create an oil. And that oil is all you need to cleanse, moisturize your face. It's sort of a 1-step, and that's it, because it's just for you. If you think about face oils and how much you can put in there, if you buy anything off the shelf, there's so many other ingredients that you don't specifically need that it's taking up precious real estate, that I really feel like that's where custom face oil makes a lot more sense. And then we have our Soul Quiz, which is your human design. And so from that, you'll understand your chart, but then we also offer more comprehensive reports if you want to dive deeper.
So I don't know that I would trust ingredients from Ireland, because the Irish have the worst skin, I would say, of anyone.
So I will say we only use botanicals that we know are proven and good. And so if it happens to be a country where we're like, nothing really grows there.
Because I married an Italian. I know the Mediterranean skin, the Italian skin, they all have amazing skin. The Irish,
I will say Europe, we got more continent wise. So it'll probably be more of a European.
Exactly.
Type, right?
I'm sure. I want to share a quote real quick, because I think it's important, particularly for women, in just talking about your whole journey and your decision, which, by the way, takes a lot of courage to do that. You said, try and change the belief that you have to hustle to be successful by affirming that you can do it and still have peace. So, one of the reasons you left investment banking was that constant grind and the stress. And you thought, geez, I'm not happy. I'm getting sick. What do you do today to have your own company like this? There are days where things go wrong and there's a lot of stress because you're managing everything. So what do you do in today's world for yourself on those stressful days to kind of bring you back to a sense of calm?
So I meditate every day, and I have a practice of just, it's a mudra. You just put your fingers together. And so if in a moment of stress during the day, I do that, I can immediately drop myself into a more calm state. And so that for me has always been something in my toolbox that works really, really well. But a daily meditation practice has 110% kept me sane through motherhood of teens and running my own business and, taking care of aging parents, the whole thing.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's a tough time, right? Children, aging parents. Yeah. How happy are you as an entrepreneur? Do you ever miss kind of the 9 to 5 and the security? No.
Not even a minute. I mean, I think sometimes the bonuses, but
no one's cheering you on.
Yeah, exactly.
No one's saying good job.
Yeah, exactly. You don't get that feedback you get otherwise. But I couldn't even imagine. I love that there's no FaceTime, which I think there's a lot of wasted time in corporate where you're at work because you think people need to see you there, but you don't actually have work that you need to do. So eliminating all of that and just being able to be creative and do things in a way that I feel are in alignment with me, I think has just been so transformational. I could never go back.
Yeah. One last question, Kavita, if you have some words of wisdom for a woman who's watching or listening and she's contemplating a jump out, but she's afraid, what would you say to her?
I would say never let fear be a reason that you don't do something, ever. There can be a concrete reason, but it shouldn't be fear.
It shouldn't be fear. Or it's do it anyway, right?
Right.
Because we will be afraid for big transitions. We will be afraid, but do it anyway.
Do it anyway. Yeah. I think fear in itself is not a reason. And then that's, I think, the biggest thing to remember. It's like you can be scared and do it anyway. But really look like, what am I actually scared of? And what is the chance that that's actually going to happen?
Yeah, I love that. Well, listen, I'm so grateful that you took time out of your day to share your story with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed the conversation.
We're going to go into our last break and I will be back to close out the show.
We are CHOP, and we can't wait to show you around. We're the nation's first children's hospital. Now, a care network with more than 50 locations that continues to expand. 3 state-of-the-art research buildings with 1.5 million square feet of space. We have grown from 12 beds 165 years ago to nearly 600 beds and one of the best children's hospitals in the world. We have a level 1 trauma center, 11 floors of patient units, more than 20 operating rooms, first of its kind delivery unit for babies with birth defects, a separate cardiac operative and catheterization suite, and places to learn, like our internationally recognized simulation center. We have trained generations of leaders in the field of pediatrics. We are world leaders in medicine, surgery, and science. One of the top recipients in NIH funding for pediatric research. In this building, pioneers in CAR T therapy, mitochondrial disease, brain tumors, hyperinsulinism, and other rare diseases. Here, groundbreaking work in fetal surgery, genetics and genomics, and neurology. In our newest building, leaders in social determinants of health, clinical informatics and epidemiology, autism, trauma and injury prevention. Our patients come from every state and 115 countries. Meeting these challenges requires the best and the brightest. We are passionate about pediatrics. We are motivated to make a difference in the world and in our community. We are a team. We are CHOP.
that's it, everyone, for another week of Women to Watch. I hope you enjoyed my interview with Kavita. Next week, I'll be sitting down with Keisha Nix, and Keisha is the Vice President of Charitable Affairs for the LA Lakers. Thanks as always to our sponsors and our watch team, and I hope you have a great week.